The Valkyrie warship moved through the dark of space like a predator hunting for prey. It was called the Dominance of Stars, and it had served the Empire for 300 years. In that time, it had captured thousands of prisoners from dozens of species. But the creature sitting in the holding cell today was something new. Admiral Zethner walked down the corridor toward the detention block with heavy steps. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he tried to understand the report his officers had given him. They had intercepted a small human transport vessel near the border of contested space. The ship had no weapons. It had no military markings. It carried no cargo of value. And its only passenger was an old man. The admiral entered the observation room and looked through the transparent barrier at the prisoner. The human sat on a metal bench with his hands resting on his knees. His skin was wrinkled and spotted with age. His hair was white like fresh snow. His body was thin and fragile, and his hands shook slightly even when he held them still. Zethner turned to his subordinate with anger in his voice. "You brought our ship out of patrol formation for this? One old human in a broken transport." "He was in contested space, Admiral. Protocol required us to intercept and investigate." "Protocol?" Zethner made a sound of disgust. "What is his name?" "Henry Callahan. 87 years old, according to human measurements. He was traveling to a colony world called New Haven to visit family members." The Admiral studied the old man through the barrier. Humans were soft creatures. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor plating. Their bodies broke easily and healed slowly. This one looked like he might fall apart if someone touched him too hard. The Valkyrie had conquered species far more impressive than this. Zethner entered the cell. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in scales that could stop a blade. His claws had torn through metal doors. His teeth had crushed bone. He towered over the seated human like a mountain standing over a pebble. "Human," he said in a voice that echoed off the walls, "you are now a prisoner of the Valkyrie Empire. You will answer my questions. You will tell me everything you know about human military positions in this sector." Henry Callahan looked up at the massive alien with pale blue eyes. There was no fear in them, no panic, just a tired sort of patience, like a grandfather waiting for a child to finish a tantrum. "Son," Henry said quietly, "I'm going to give you one chance to let me go." Zethner's mandibles clicked together in the Valkyrie equivalent of laughter. "You threaten me? Look at yourself. You are old. You are weak. You have no weapons, no allies, no hope of escape. You are nothing." "I'm not threatening you," Henry replied. His voice was calm and steady. "I'm warning you. There's a difference. You've made a mistake by taking me, and I'm giving you a chance to fix it before things get bad." "What mistake?" "We captured one useless human too old to fight and too weak to run." "What possible consequence could there be?" Henry sighed. He slowly rolled up the sleeve of his left arm, revealing faded markings on his skin. The tattoo was old and blurred by time, but the numbers and symbols were still visible. The Valkyrie translation systems could not read them. "My name is Henry Callahan," the old man said. "But a long time ago, people called me Gunnery Sergeant Callahan. I served in the Colonial Marine Corps for 30 years. I fought in wars your people have never heard of. The Outer Rim campaigns, the Siege of New Manila, the liberation of Tau Ceti." He paused and looked at his weathered hands. "I killed a lot of enemies in those days. I watched a lot of friends die. I did things that still wake me up at night." Zethner listened but was not impressed. "That was decades ago. You are not that soldier anymore. Now you are just a feeble old man waiting to die." "Maybe so," Henry agreed. "I retired 60 years back. Raised a family. Had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Married my wife last spring after 52 years of marriage. His voice grew soft for a moment, then hardened again. "All I wanted was to see my granddaughter Katie one more time before I go. She lives on New Haven with her husband and kids. I was almost there when your ship grabbed me. A sad story, but it changes nothing. It changes everything." Henry looked directly into the Admiral's 4 eyes. "You took me from my family. You put me in a cage like an animal. And now you're going to answer for that." Zethner leaned down until his face was close to the old man's. His breath was hot and smelled like copper. "I will do nothing. You will sit in this cell until my superiors decide what to do with you. Perhaps they will interrogate you. Perhaps they will use you as a bargaining chip. Perhaps they will simply kill you. It does not matter to me." Henry did not flinch. He did not look away. "I'm going to give you 24 hours to change your mind. 24 hours to release me and return my ship. After that, I'm going to make a call." "A call?" The Admiral's mandibles clicked again. "To whom? Your family? Your retired soldier friends? What will they do? Fly here in their personal ships and demand your release?" "Something like that." "Impossible. We are deep in Velkari territory. No human fleet could reach us without being detected and destroyed." "You are bluffing." Henry smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible on his aged face, but something in it made the Admiral's scales prickle with a sensation he did not recognize. It took him a moment to realize what it was. It was unease. 24 hours, Henry repeated. "Then you'll see what happens when you touch one of ours." Zethner straightened up and walked out of the cell without another word. He told his guards to double their watch on the prisoner. He told his communications officer to monitor all frequencies for any unusual signals. He told himself that the old man was bluffing, that there was nothing to fear from a fragile human who could barely stand without shaking. But as he walked back to his quarters, the Admiral could not shake the memory of those pale blue eyes. They had seen something he had not. They knew something he did not. In his cell, Henry Callahan sat back against the cold metal wall and closed his eyes. He thought about his wife and the garden they had planted together. He thought about his children and the paths they had chosen in life. He thought about his granddaughter, Katie, and the great-grandchildren he had never met. Then he thought about the small device hidden in the lining of his jacket, the one the Velkari scanners had not detected. It was old technology, nearly as old as he was, but it still worked. 20-4 hours. He would give them 24 hours to do the right thing. After that, he would show them what it meant to be human. The 24 hours passed slowly on the Velkari warship. Henry Callahan sat in his cell and did nothing unusual. He ate the food they brought him without complaint. He slept on the hard metal bench as if it were a soft bed. He answered questions with short, simple words that told them nothing useful. Admiral Zethner watched the old human through security monitors and waited for something to happen. Nothing did. The deadline came and went, and the prisoner remained quiet and calm. "You see?" the Admiral told his officers. He was bluffing. An old man's empty words meant to frighten us. There is nothing to fear from these humans. But on the morning of the third day, everything changed. Zethner was on the bridge reviewing patrol reports when his communications officer ran in with panic in his eyes. The young Velkari scales had turned pale, a sign of extreme stress in their species. "Admiral, we have a problem." The prisoner accessed our communications array. "What? How is that possible?" "He is locked in a sealed cell with no equipment." "We do not know, sir. Our security systems did not detect any intrusion. But a signal was sent from inside the ship approximately 40 hours ago. It used a frequency we have never seen before. It bypassed every protocol we have." Zethner grabbed the report from his officer's hands. What did he send? A series of code phrases in the human language. His identification number. And coordinates. The officer swallowed hard. Our coordinates, Admiral. He told them exactly where we are. The Admiral's 4 eyes went wide. Lock down the ship immediately. All hands to battle stations. I want long-range sensors scanning every direction. And bring the prisoner to the bridge, now. For 2 more days, they waited and watched. The sensors showed nothing. No human ships. No distress signals being answered. No fleet coming to rescue one worthless old man. Zethner began to relax. Perhaps the signal had been sent but never received. Perhaps it had been received but ignored. Perhaps the humans simply did not care enough about one elderly prisoner to risk a confrontation with the Volcari Empire. On the 5th day after Henry's capture, their sensors detected something at the edge of the star system. Admiral, we have contacts. Identify them. Working on it. Sir. The tactical officer's claws moved across his console. Then they stopped. Admiral, I am showing multiple vessels. Human vessels. How many? 732, sir. And more are arriving every minute. Zethner moved to the main view screen and watched in disbelief as ships began to appear from slip space in an endless stream. They came from every direction. They came in every size. And they kept coming. He saw military destroyers with weapons charged and ready. He saw cargo haulers with makeshift cannons welded to their hulls. He saw mining ships with industrial cutting lasers pointed forward like rifles. He saw private yachts bristling with missile pods that looked like they had been installed yesterday. He saw colony transports with families still visible through their windows. He saw ships that looked like they had been pulled from junkyards and somehow made to fly again. Admiral, the count is now at 1,400 vessels. 1,500. 1,600. This is impossible, Zethner whispered. Where are they all coming from? His communications officer spoke up. Sir, we are being hailed. Thousands of hails, all on different frequencies. They are all saying the same thing. Put it through. The speakers on the bridge crackled to life, and a chorus of human voices filled the air. Men and women, young and old, military and civilian. They all spoke in unison, and their words were simple. You have one of ours. We want him back. Zethner turned to look at the tactical display. The number of ships had passed 2,000 and was still climbing. At the center of the growing swarm, larger vessels were emerging. Cruisers, battleships, a carrier so massive that it dwarfed even the dominance of stars. Get me the prisoner, the Admiral ordered. Get him here now. The guards brought Henry Callahan to the bridge a few minutes later. The old man walked slowly, his joints clearly hurting with each step. But his head was held high, and there was a light in his pale blue eyes that had not been there before. Henry looked at the view screen showing the human fleet and smiled. I told you to let me go. Son, who are you? Zethner demanded. We scanned your records. You are nobody. A retired soldier from minor conflicts 60 years ago. How did you summon this fleet? That's where you made your mistake, Henry said. He walked closer to the view screen and studied the ships. Some of them he recognized. Some of them he did not. All of them had come for him. You don't understand humans. Explain yourself. I am nobody. You're right about that. Just an old man who wanted to see his granddaughter. But that's exactly the point. Henry turned to face the Admiral. Your people conquer because you are strong. You see weakness and you attack it. You saw me old and alone, and you thought I was worthless. You are worthless. To you, maybe, but not to them. Henry pointed at the fleet. Every ship out there has a reason to be here. Some of them served with me in the Marines. Some of them are children of people who served with me. Some of them are complete strangers who heard that a fellow human was in trouble and decided to help. for one old man? They risk war for one old man? They'd risk war for any human. That's what you don't understand. We don't leave our people behind. Not our soldiers. Not our civilians. Not our elderly. Not anyone. Ever. The tactical officer's voice interrupted them. Admiral, the count has reached 3,000 vessels. The largest human military presence we have ever recorded in one location. They have us surrounded. Zethaner looked at the view screen, then at the old man, then back at the view screen. His scales had gone completely pale. His claws gripped the railing so hard that the metal bent under them. "This is madness," he said. "You cannot all be willing to die for one person." Henry Callahan shrugged his thin shoulders. "Maybe not all of us, but enough of us. And that's what matters." He looked at the Admiral with something like pity in his eyes. "You still have a chance to end this peacefully. Give me back my ship and let me go home. That's all any of us want. And if I refuse?" The old man's expression did not change, but his voice grew cold. "Then you'll find out what happens when 3,000 humans get angry at the same time." Outside, the fleet continued to grow. Ships were still arriving from every corner of human space. Some had traveled for days. Some had pulled their vessels out of storage after years of neglect. Some had armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find or build or steal. They had not been ordered to come. They had not been paid to come. They had simply heard that one of their own was in danger, and they had answered. That was what the Valkyrie did not understand. That was what made humanity dangerous. The Valkyrie Empire did not become powerful by backing down from fights. When Admiral Zethaner sent his urgent request for reinforcements, the High Command responded within hours. A battle group of 200 warships was dispatched immediately, led by High Commander Velthax himself. Velthax was a legend among his people. He had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds. He had defeated fleets twice the size of his own through superior tactics and ruthless aggression. His name was spoken with fear by the enemies of the Empire. When his fleet arrived and he saw the human vessels surrounding the dominance of stars, he felt no fear. He felt only confusion. "What am I looking at?" He asked his tactical advisor. "These cannot all be military vessels." "They are not, High Commander. Our scans indicate that only approximately 15% are actual warships. The rest are civilian craft, cargo haulers, transport ships, mining vessels, even personal vehicles." "Personal vehicles? Someone brought their family shuttle to a potential battle?" "Multiple someones, sir. We have identified recreational boats, agricultural transports, and at least one vessel that appears to be a mobile restaurant." Velthax stared at the display in disbelief. The human fleet now numbered over 3,000 ships, but most of them had no business being in a war zone. They were held together with repair patches and hope. Their weapons were improvised at best. Many of them would be destroyed in the first minute of any real engagement. "They are insane," he said finally. "Completely insane." "Perhaps, High Commander. But there are a lot of them." Velthax took command of the combined Valkyrie fleet and moved to a position facing the human armada. His 200 warships were outnumbered, but they were purpose-built for combat. Their weapons could cut through civilian hulls like claws through flesh. Their shields could withstand bombardments that would vaporize lesser vessels. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet. The response came from a young woman on the bridge of a mid-sized cruiser. She had dark hair and pale blue eyes that looked familiar somehow. "I'm Katie Brennan," she said. "Henry Callahan is my grandfather. I'm here to take him home." Velthax studied her face on the screen. She was young, probably no more than 30 human years. But she carried herself like someone who had already decided she was willing to die. "I am High Commander Velthax of the Valkyrie Empire. Your fleet is in our territory without permission. This is an act of aggression. No, sir. Kidnapping my grandfather from neutral space was an act of aggression. Holding an 87-year-old man prisoner was an act of aggression. We're just the response. Your response is to bring thousands of adequate vessels to challenge the most powerful military in this sector. Half your fleet would be destroyed in the first exchange of fire. Katie nodded slowly. You might be right. Maybe you'll kill half of us before we bring you down. Maybe more. She leaned forward slightly. We don't care. You don't care about your own lives? Every person on every one of these ships knows they might die today. They came anyway. They came because Grandpa Henry helped them once, or helped their parents, or their grandparents. They came because they heard that an old Marine was in trouble and couldn't stand by while that happened. They came because humans don't calculate acceptable losses when family is involved. Valfax was silent for a moment. He had fought many species across the galaxy. Some surrendered easily. Some fought bravely, but logically. None of them had ever spoken to him like this. What you describe is not military strategy. It is emotion. Yes, Katie agreed. It is. And that's why you've already lost, even if you don't know it yet. Explain. If you destroy every ship here today, 10,000 more will come tomorrow. 100,000 after that. You've already made enemies of every human in the galaxy by taking one old man from his family. You can't undo that. You can only make it worse. She gestured at her view screen, where the silhouettes of thousands of ships were visible against the stars. You see desperation out there? Cargo ships with welded-on guns? Fishing boats with plasma cutters? That's not weakness, Commander. That's love. That's loyalty. That's what happens when you hurt one of ours. Behind her, Valfax could see other humans on the bridge of her ship. Young and old. Men and women. Some wore military uniforms. Others wore civilian clothes. One man near the back was holding what appeared to be a cooking pan, as if he had dropped everything and run to his ship without thinking. You would start a war that could kill millions of your people. For one old man. He's not just one old man. He's my grandfather. He walked me down the aisle at my wedding because my father couldn't be there. He helped my children when they were born. He taught me how to fish and how to fix an engine and how to never give up on the people you love. Katie's voice cracked slightly, but she kept going. And even if he wasn't any of those things to me, he's still a human being. He's still one of us. That's enough. Valfax turned to his tactical display. His advisors had run the simulations. The Valkyrie would win a battle against this fleet. They had superior firepower, better training, stronger ships. But the cost would be high. Hundreds of Valkyrie vessels destroyed. Thousands of soldiers killed. And for what? One elderly prisoner who had no strategic value. And then, as Katie had said, more humans would come. This would not be the end of the conflict. It would be the beginning. The High Commander had conquered many worlds. He had crushed many enemies. But he had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that did not calculate. An enemy that did not weigh costs and benefits. An enemy that would burn themselves to ash just to take you with them. He made his decision. What do you want? He asked. Katie's expression did not soften. We want my grandfather released immediately. We want his ship returned. We want a formal apology broadcast to every human world. And we want your empire to understand that humans are not to be touched. Not ever. Not for any reason. Those are significant demands. Those are our minimum demands. You can accept them, or you can find out how many of your ships we take with us when we go. Valfax looked at the screen for a long moment. Then he looked at his tactical display. Then he looked at the faces of his bridge crew, all of them waiting for his order. In 300 years of service, No Valkyrie commander had ever surrendered to a hostile force. The concept was considered shameful beyond measure. Warriors died before they admitted defeat, but Velthax had not survived this long by being stupid. He knew when a battle could be won and when it could not. And he knew that winning this battle would only lead to a much larger war that the Empire could not afford. "Very well," he said finally. "We accept your terms. The prisoner will be released." On the bridge of her ship, Katie Brennan closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them again, they were wet with tears she refused to let fall. "Thank you, Commander. That's the smartest decision you've ever made." Around her, across thousands of ships, humans began to cheer. The sound could not travel through the vacuum of space, but somehow it felt like the whole universe could hear them. They had come to bring one of their own home, and they had succeeded. The transfer took place in the empty space between the two fleets. A single Valkyrie shuttle carried Henry Callahan from the dominance of stars to the neutral zone, where his own small transport ship waited for him. It had been cleaned and refueled, though some of his personal items had been searched and moved. Henry walked down the shuttle ramp with slow, careful steps. His body ached from days of sitting on hard metal benches. His back hurt from sleeping in positions no 87-year-old should have to endure. But his spirit was lighter than it had been in years. Doc Katie was waiting for him at the bottom of the ramp. She had piloted her own shuttle from her cruiser to meet him. When she saw her grandfather emerge from the Valkyrie vessel, she ran to him without caring what anyone thought. "Grandpa," she said, wrapping her arms around him as gently as she could. "Thank God you're okay." "I'm fine, sweetheart. A little stiff, a little tired. But I've been through worse." He patted her back and then pulled away to look at her face. "You've been crying." "I have not. Your eyes are red." "Space dust." She wiped her face quickly. "Come on, let's get you to your ship." They walked together across the loading bay, Henry leaning on his granddaughter's arm for support. Through the transparent force field, he could see the human fleet spread across the stars like a constellation of determination. Thousands of ships of every size and shape, all of them here because of him. "That's quite a gathering you put together," he said. "I didn't put it together." "Nobody did. Word just spread." Katie helped him step over a loading cable. "Once people heard it was you, they started showing up. First it was the Marines you served with, the ones who were still alive. Then it was their families. Then it was strangers who heard about what happened and decided they couldn't stay home." "Strangers?" "A lot of them, Grandpa. People you've never met. People from worlds you've never visited. They heard that a human was being held prisoner by the Valkyrie, and they grabbed whatever ship they could find and came." Henry stopped walking and looked out at the fleet again. He could see a cargo hauler nearby with scorch marks on its hull where someone had hastily welded a weapons platform. He could see a passenger liner with its windows still lit, families visible inside watching the historic moment. He could see a tiny personal shuttle that couldn't have held more than 2 people, somehow armed with a mining laser that was probably worth more than the ship itself. "All this for me," he said quietly. "All this for any of us. That's the point." Katie squeezed his arm. "You're the one who taught me that. You know, when I was little and the other kids were mean to me, you told me that the Callahans never leave anyone behind. You said that family means showing up when things are hard, not just when things are easy. I remember." "Well, Grandpa, you have a lot of family." They reached his transport ship a few minutes later. It was a modest vessel, designed for a single occupant making short trips between colony worlds. Henry had owned it for 15 years. It had taken him to visit his children, his grandchildren, his old Marine buddies. It had carried him to his wife's funeral. He ran his hand along the hull and felt the familiar texture of the metal. It was good to be back. "Your cousin Bobby is here," Katie said as they walked up the boarding ramp. He flew Dad's old fishing boat all the way from Earth. Henry laughed. That thing still works? Barely. He actually mounted a plasma cutter on the front, like it was going to do something useful in a battle. That boy never was very practical. He's getting yelled at by a Navy captain right now for unauthorized weapons modification. He's loving every second of it. They entered the ship and Henry settled into his pilot chair with a sigh of relief. The seat knew the shape of his body after so many years. The controls were exactly where he expected them to be. For the first time since his capture, he felt truly safe. What happens now? He asked. Now we go home. The Valkyrie agreed to broadcast an apology to every human world. They're going to pretend this was all a misunderstanding, that you were picked up by accident and released as soon as they realized their error. Katie's voice hardened. Everyone knows that's a lie, but it lets them save face while we make our point. And what point is that? That humans are off limits, forever. She sat down in the co-pilot chair, even though there was no co-pilot seat on this ship. She had brought a folding chair from her shuttle just so she could stay with him. Every species in the galaxy is watching what happened here. The Valkyrie are supposed to be one of the most powerful militaries in known space. And they backed down from a bunch of armed civilians because they didn't want to fight us. They would have won that fight. Maybe, probably, but they would have paid for it. And they would have started something they couldn't finish. Katie looked at her grandfather with pride in her eyes. That's the message, Grandpa. It's not that we're the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced. It's that we don't give up. We don't count the cost when someone we love is in danger. We just show up and deal with whatever happens. Henry nodded slowly. He had known this about humans his whole life. He had seen it in the Marines, where soldiers would risk everything to bring a wounded buddy home. He had seen it in his family, where people would drop everything to help a relative in need. He had seen it in strangers on the street, who would stop to help someone they had never met, but he had never seen it on this scale. Thousands of ships, millions of people, all of them willing to fight and die for one old man they had never met. It was humbling. It was terrifying. And it was beautiful. I need to thank them, he said. All of them. You can try, but I don't think they want thanks. They didn't come here for gratitude. They came here because it was the right thing to do. Still, it matters. Katie smiled and stood up from her folding chair. Get some rest first. You look like you haven't slept properly in days. I haven't. Then sleep. We have a long trip to New Haven, and the kids are very excited to meet their great-grandfather. She bent down and kissed his forehead. I'll be on my ship right next to you the whole way. You're safe now. Henry watched her leave and felt his eyes grow heavy. The adrenaline of the past week was finally fading, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion that demanded attention. He reclined his pilot's seat and closed his eyes. Outside his window, the human fleet began to disperse. Ships were turning away and jumping to slip space, heading back to wherever they had come from. Some had traveled for days to get here. Now they would travel for days to get home. They had not been paid. They had not been ordered. They had simply heard the call and answered. That was what it meant to be human. As Henry drifted off to sleep, he thought about his wife. She would have loved this. She would have laughed at the absurdity of it and cried at the beauty of it. She would have said something wise about the nature of family and love and loyalty. He missed her more than he could say, but for the first time since her death, he did not feel alone. He was surrounded by family. 3,000 ships worth of family. The news of what happened spread across the galaxy like fire across dry grass. Every species with access to interstellar communications heard the story. The Valkyrie Empire, one of the most feared military powers in known space, had captured a single elderly human. And in response, thousands of human ships had assembled within days to demand his release. military analysts studied the incident with great interest. They counted the ships. They identified the types. They noted that less than 15% were actual warships. The rest were civilian vessels armed with improvised weapons, many of them so poorly equipped that they would have been destroyed in the first minute of combat. And yet the Volcari had backed down. Politicians across dozens of worlds discussed the implications in closed sessions. Diplomats revised their assessments of humanity. Intelligence agencies updated their files. Everyone reached the same conclusion. Humans were more dangerous than anyone had realized, but not for the reasons they had expected. It was not their weapons. Other species had better weapons. It was not their ships. Other species had faster and stronger ships. It was not their technology or their numbers, or their strategic position in the galaxy. It was their willingness to sacrifice everything for each other. Henry Callahan arrived on New Haven 3 weeks after his rescue. The colony world was a small place, mostly farms and small towns scattered across green valleys. His granddaughter, Katie, lived in a house on the edge of a forest with her husband and their 2 children. The children were waiting for him when his ship landed. A boy of 8 and a girl of 5, both of them bouncing with excitement. They had never met their great-grandfather in person before, only seen him through video calls that crossed light years of space. "Great-Grandpa Henry," the boy shouted as Henry walked down the boarding ramp. "You're famous. Everyone at school is talking about you." Henry laughed and bent down to hug both children at once. His back protested the movement, but he did not care. Some things were worth a little pain. "I'm not famous," he said. "I'm just old." "You started a war," the girl said with wide eyes. "Almost started a war. There's a difference. And I didn't start anything. I just asked for help, and a lot of good people answered." Katie and her husband came out to greet him next. There were more hugs, more tears, more words that felt inadequate for the emotions behind them. Then they went inside for dinner, and Henry got to sit at a table with his family for the first time in years. The next few months were the happiest of Henry's life since his wife had passed. He played with his great-grandchildren in the yard. He taught them how to fish in the nearby river, just as he had taught Katie when she was young. He told them stories about the old days, about the wars he had fought and the friends he had made and lost. He also received visitors. A lot of visitors. Marines from his old unit came, or their children or their grandchildren. They brought gifts and stories and tears of gratitude. They told Henry about what his leadership had meant to them decades ago. They told him how his example had shaped their lives and the lives of their families. Strangers came too. People who had been in the fleet that rescued him. They wanted to shake his hand and tell him they were glad he was safe. They did not want thanks. They just wanted him to know that they had been there. One man arrived in a battered fishing boat that looked like it had barely survived the journey. He was Katie's cousin Bobby, and he still had the plasma cutter mounted on the front of his vessel. "I never did take that thing off," Bobby admitted with a grin. "Figured it might come in handy someday." "For what?" Henry asked. "Cutting fish?" "You never know, Grandpa. You never know." Letters arrived by the thousands. Messages from across human space, from people who had heard the story and wanted to express their support. Some of them were from important people. Politicians, military leaders, celebrities. Most of them were from ordinary citizens who simply wanted Henry to know that he mattered to them. One letter came from a young woman on a planet Henry had never heard of. She wrote that her father had served with Henry in the Colonial Marines 50 years ago. Her father had died when she was a child, killed in a training accident. But before he died, he had told her stories about Gunnery Sergeant Callahan, about how he had always looked out for his men and never left anyone behind. When she heard that Henry was in trouble, she had borrowed her neighbor's ship and flown for 3 days straight to join the fleet. She had arrived too late. The crisis was already over. But she had come anyway, because it was the right thing to do. She wanted Henry to know that her father would have been proud. Henry read that letter 5 times and cried each time. The story of what happened became known throughout the galaxy as the New Haven incident. It changed how other species thought about humanity. Some of them became more cautious, more respectful. They understood now that humans could not be threatened or intimidated through conventional means. Hurting one human meant facing all of them. Other species became more curious. They sent diplomats and researchers to study human society. They wanted to understand what made these soft, fragile creatures so fiercely loyal to each other. What they found confused them. Humans had no biological imperative to protect strangers. They had no hive mind that linked them together. They had no genetic programming that forced them to sacrifice for the group. They simply chose to do it. Every time. Without hesitation. It was the most dangerous thing any species in the galaxy had ever encountered. Henry Callahan died peacefully in his sleep 18 months after his rescue. He was 89 years old. He passed away in his granddaughter's house, surrounded by family, with the sound of children playing in the next room. His funeral was held in a small church on New Haven. It was supposed to be a private ceremony, just family and close friends. But word got out, as it always does. Over 500 people attended, filling the church and spilling out onto the lawn. 37 ship captains who had come to his rescue made the journey to pay their respects. A retired Navy admiral gave the eulogy. 3 sitting senators attended. The Colonial Marines sent an honor guard that folded the flag over his casket with perfect precision. The service was broadcast across human space. Millions watched. Some of them had known Henry personally. Most of them had never met him at all. But they felt connected to him anyway, because his story had reminded them of something important. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the smartest or the fastest or the most advanced. But they have something that no other species has quite managed to match. They have each other. When the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, Katie stood alone at her grandfather's grave. The headstone was simple gray marble with simple words carved into it. She had chosen them herself after much thought. The inscription read, "One of ours." That was all. That was everything. In the years that followed, those words became a symbol throughout human space. They were printed on shirts and painted on ships and inscribed on monuments. They appeared in speeches and songs and stories passed down through generations. They served as a reminder and a promise. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter how old or young, how strong or weak, how important or ordinary, if you are human, you are one of ours, and we will never leave you behind.